My name is Tom, and until recently, my life was quite ordinary. I worked as a painter, lived in a cozy house with my beloved wife Sarah, and enjoyed the simple pleasures of life. However, everything changed when Sarah went on a business trip abroad. Initially, she was supposed to stay there for only a few days, but due to unforeseen circumstances and flight cancellations, her absence dragged on for a whole week. I found things to do to keep from missing her, but the house seemed empty and quiet without her presence. One day, my mother-in-law Ellen called and asked for my help. She had been planning to renovate her house for a long time, but couldn't find the right moment. Learning that I was alone and had free time, she decided it was the perfect opportunity for both of us. "Tom, dear, I would be very grateful if you could help me with the renovation," Ellen said over the phone. "I know you're a jack of all trades, and your experience would be useful to me." I gladly agreed, realizing that it would help me take my mind off missing Sarah and also do a good deed for Ellen. Besides, repair work had always been my element, and I enjoyed taking on any projects. The next day I drove to Ellen's house, bringing all the necessary tools and materials. She greeted me with open arms and a sincere smile on her face. "Tom, I'm so glad you're here," she exclaimed, hugging me tightly. "With your help, we'll quickly tackle this renovation." I smiled back, feeling the warmth of her embrace and anticipating interesting work. We inspected the house, discussed the scope of work, and made an action plan. Ellen wanted to freshen up the interior, paint the walls, and update the kitchen. We immediately got down to business, and time flew by. Ellen turned out to be an excellent helper. She was not afraid of work and was always ready to hand over the right tool or keep up a conversation. We worked tirelessly, but the atmosphere was light and friendly. By the end of the first day, we had already managed to paint several walls and dismantle the old kitchen cabinets. Tired but satisfied with the work done, we settled on the sofa in the living room, sipping cold lemonade. "Thank you, Tom," Ellen said, looking at me with gratitude. "I can't imagine how I would have coped with all this without you." "Always happy to help, Ellen," I replied, feeling satisfaction from a job well done and pleasant company. We sat and talked for a long time about everything in the world, sharing life stories and reminiscing about the past. I began to understand that Ellen was not just my mother-in-law, but an interesting and multifaceted person with whom I felt easy and comfortable communicating. This is how our renovation days began, full of work, laughter, and heartfelt conversations. I did not yet suspect where this sudden closeness would lead and what trials awaited us ahead. The next few days flew by like a single moment. Ellen and I completely immersed ourselves in the renovation, trying to get as much done as possible before Sarah's return. Every morning I would come to her house, and we would immediately get to work, painting walls, laying tiles, installing new kitchen cabinets. We worked tirelessly, but the fatigue was compensated by pleasant company and a sense that we were doing something worthwhile. During breaks from work, we often talked, and I got to know Ellen more and more as a person. She told me about her youth, about how she met Sarah's father, about her dreams and disappointments. I, in turn, shared my stories and experiences. "You know, Tom," Ellen said once when we were taking a break for tea, "I've always admired what a good husband you are to Sarah. She's very lucky to have you." I felt myself blush at her compliment. "Thank you, Ellen. I try to be the best husband I can be, but Sarah is a wonderful wife too, and I thank fate for her every day." "You two are really the perfect couple," Ellen smiled, and there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "Cherish what you have, Tom. True love is a rare gift." Her words made me think about my relationship with Sarah. We had been married for several years, and sometimes it seemed to me that our feelings had lost their former sharpness. But now, being away from her, I was especially acutely aware of how much I loved my wife. In the evenings, after a strenuous workday, Ellen and I would cook dinner and talk for a long time over a glass of wine. She turned out to be an excellent storyteller and listener, and I grew more and more fond of her and respected her. One day when we stayed late, Ellen suggested that I spend the night in the guest room. I hesitated, but then agreed, not wanting to drive across town in the dark. We continued our conversation in the living room, settling on the soft couch. Ellen talked about her failed marriage and how difficult it was for her in the first years after the divorce. "I thought I would never be able to love again," she confessed, looking at me with a sad smile. But then I realized that love comes in different forms. Love for children, for friends, for life. It always finds a way to come back to us. Her words touched me to the depths of my soul. I suddenly saw Ellen in a new light, not just as a mother-in-law, but as a woman with a wealth of life experience and wisdom, worthy of admiration. Without realizing it, I took her hand and squeezed it slightly in support. Ellen looked at me in surprise, but did not pull away. There was tension between us, some invisible spark that we both felt. We looked into each other's eyes, and time seemed to stop. I knew I should let go of her hand, get up and go to the guest room, but something kept me in place, some force of attraction that I could not resist. And at that moment, when the tension reached its peak, Ellen leaned forward and kissed me. It was a gentle, almost weightless kiss, but it was as if it sent an electric shock through my body. I froze, not knowing how to react. My mind screamed at me that this was wrong, that I should stop immediately, but my body treacherously responded to her touch. Ellen pulled away, breathing heavily. "I'm sorry, Tom. I shouldn't have. This is a mistake." But something in her eyes said the opposite. I saw in them a reflection of my own desire, my own longing for closeness and warmth. And before I could realize what I was doing, I pulled Ellen to me and kissed her with all the passion that had accumulated over those days. She responded with no less ardor, and we lost ourselves in a whirlwind of emotions and sensations. That night we made love, forgetting about everything in the world. It was an incredible, almost mystical experience, as if two lonely souls had found each other in this crazy world. Falling asleep next to Ellen, I realized I had made a mistake. But at that moment, I couldn't bring myself to regret what had happened. I felt alive, wanted, and truly happy for the first time in a long time. Waking up in the morning in Ellen's arms, I felt both bliss and horror at the realization of what had happened. The events of the previous night seemed like a dream, beautiful and frightening at the same time. I carefully slipped out of bed, trying not to wake Ellen, and went to the kitchen. I needed to think, to sort out everything that had happened, and to decide what to do next. Sitting at the table with a cup of strong coffee, I replayed the memories of my intimacy with Ellen in my head. Every touch, every kiss, it was all so exciting and yet so wrong. I tried to convince myself that it was just a momentary weakness, that we had both simply succumbed to loneliness and longing. But deep down, I knew that something more than just physical attraction had arisen between us. My thoughts were interrupted by Ellen, who entered the kitchen. She looked as lost and embarrassed as I was. We looked at each other, not knowing what to say. "Tom, we need to talk," she finally said, sitting down across from me. I nodded, realizing that this conversation could not be avoided. "Ellen, I don't know what came over me. It was a mistake," she finished for me. "I know, Tom, we shouldn't have let this happen." I swallowed hard, feeling a lump rising in my throat. "But what do we do now? How will we look Sarah and our families in the eye?" Ellen sighed, lowering her eyes. "We have to keep this a secret, Tom, for the sake of all of us. What happened? It has to stay between us." I understood that she was right. Revealing our secret would destroy not only my marriage, but our entire family. It would hurt too many people. "Okay, Ellen," I said, trying to get my thoughts in order. "We'll pretend nothing happened. We'll keep working on the renovation, and then we'll go back to our normal lives." She nodded, but in her eyes I saw the same pain and regret that I felt in my own. We both understood that simply forgetting about everything would not work, but we had no choice. Over the next few days, we tried to act as if nothing had happened. We worked, talked about neutral topics, avoided being alone together, but the tension between us did not disappear. Every look, every accidental touch reminded us of that night and the feelings we had experienced. It was as if we were walking on the edge of an abyss, risking falling into it again. One evening, when we finished laying tiles in the bathroom, Ellen suddenly burst into tears. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and she could not stop them. I hugged her, pulling her close, and stroked her hair, trying to calm her down. We stood like that for a long time, silently comforting each other. "Forgive me, Tom," she sobbed. "I didn't want it to turn out like this. I didn't want to hurt you, or Sarah, or myself."
"I know, Ellen,"
I whispered, hugging her tighter. We're both to blame, but we'll get through this. We have to." She raised her tear-stained eyes to me, and in them I saw a reflection of my own determination. We both understood that difficult times lay ahead, but we were ready to face them head-on. The remaining days before Sarah's return flew by as if in a fog. Ellen and I continued to work on the renovation, but now there was some new understanding between us. We learned to communicate without words, to understand each other with a glance. Despite the heaviness of our secret, we found solace in working together and in friendly support. Sometimes it seemed to me that only when I was with Ellen could I be myself, without masks or pretense. We often talked about the future, about how we would behave when Sarah returned. We understood that we would have to be careful not to give away our feelings. "The main thing is not to change too abruptly," Ellen said. "We should act naturally, like ordinary relatives, no extra emotions or hints." I nodded, agreeing with her. We thought through every detail, every possible situation, so that nothing could give us away. But there were also moments when we allowed ourselves to forget for a while. We would secretly hold hands, exchange meaningful glances, almost imperceptibly touch each other. These fleeting moments of closeness gave us the strength to hold on and not go crazy with longing. The day before Sarah's arrival, we finished the renovation. Ellen's house was transformed. It became bright, cozy, filled with freshness and new energy, just like our relationship with Ellen. We stood in the middle of the living room, admiring the fruits of our labor. Ellen looked tired but happy. She turned to me and took my hand. "Thank you, Tom," she said, looking into my eyes, "for everything, for your help, for your support, for being in my life." I felt a lump rise in my throat. "I'm grateful to you too, Ellen, for everything that was between us. I will never forget it." We hugged, tightly, desperately, as if trying to absorb each other, to preserve these sensations for the rest of our lives, and then, without agreeing, we kissed, gently, carefully, with the bitter taste of goodbye. It was our last kiss. We both understood that we could no longer allow ourselves this. From tomorrow on, we had to become just relatives, connected only by family ties and shared memories. We parted that evening with tears in our eyes, but with a firm determination to keep our secret. For the sake of our families, for the sake of our peace of mind, for the sake of the future that we had to build, separately. Sarah's return was both a joyful and painful event. I met her at the airport, hugged her tightly and kissed her, trying to put all my love and tenderness into these gestures. She looked tired after the long flight, but happy to finally be home. The whole way she talked about her trip, about the people she met, about the places she visited. I listened to her, smiled, asked questions, but my mind was far away. I thought about Ellen, about how she was coping, about our last evening together. At home, we organized a festive dinner in honor of Sarah's return. We sat at the table, ate, drank wine, and shared news. Everything was as always, but at the same time, everything had changed. I looked at Sarah and saw my beloved wife, with whom we had gone through so many trials, who had always been my support and encouragement. But now, next to her image in my heart, there also lived Ellen, the woman who had given me unforgettable moments of passion and emotional intimacy. I felt like the last scoundrel, deceiving Sarah, hiding the truth from her. But I also understood that revealing our secret would mean destroying not only our marriage, but our entire family. The following weeks were pure hell for me. I tried to act as usual, to be a caring husband, a loving son-in-law, but every time we met with Ellen at family events, my heart would start pounding wildly, and my eyes would fill with longing. Ellen and I kept our distance, communicating in a pointedly polite, almost formal manner. No hints, no extra words or gestures. We played our roles flawlessly, but inside we were both torn apart by pain. Time passed, and my connection with Ellen gradually weakened. We saw each other less and less often, communicated less and less. Each of us tried to live our own life, healing wounds and moving on. I immersed myself in work, tried to spend more time with Sarah, to be attentive to her needs and desires. Gradually, our marriage began to return to its usual course. Ellen also found her way. She got involved in charity work, started traveling more, visiting interesting places. I saw that she was trying to live a full life, and I was happy for her. We never discussed what had happened between us during those days when Sarah was away. It was our secret, our shared memory, which we carefully kept in our hearts. Sometimes, meeting each other's eyes at family celebrations, we would silently nod to each other, as if to say, "I remember, I will never forget." And in those glances, there was not only sadness for what might have been, but also gratitude for what we had given each other. Life went on, and our story gradually became just a distant memory. We learned to live with our secret, not allowing it to destroy our lives and relationships with loved ones. I knew that a part of my heart would always remain with Ellen, the woman who had shown me another facet of love, who had taught me to be honest with myself. And I was grateful to fate for this experience, however painful it might have been. Our story did not change the world, but it changed us. We became stronger, wiser, learned to appreciate what we have, and not to chase after ephemeral dreams. And even though our love remained in the past, it will forever remain a part of us, an invisible thread connecting our souls through time and distance. We will keep this secret until the end of our days, knowing that once we had the chance to experience something truly beautiful and tragic at the same time. This is my story, a story of forbidden love, mistakes, and redemption. A story that taught me that life is not black and white, but an endless palette of shades and halftones. And this is its main beauty and wisdom. Did you like this story? Let us know in the comments what you liked. Subscribe to our storytelling podcast. Also, don't forget to like and ring the bell so you don't miss more interesting stories. See you soon.